Alright then, here's some observations on the problem solving toolkit. We've had some questions about what format you're looking for and what's expected. The first thing is we're being deliberate in not setting a prescribed format because we're interested in the way in which you structure this. The way in which you structure it tells us a lot about your way in which you approach problem solving. Now, for the first assignment, the portfolio, we gave you a template to work from. But as adult learners, you'll find increasingly we're going to be looking to you to take initiative and to actually start thinking for yourself in the way in which you put these things together. However, I have some observations I can make which will hopefully give you some overall guidance. The first thing is always start with a rubric and the criteria. And it's the same for any assessment. Find the rubric, have a look at it, have a look what's involved. You'd be surprised, or you might not be surprised, how rarely people do that, and how often you see people asking friends on Facebook what's expected in an assignment, or handing in assignments that are missing something that's really obviously stated very clearly there. So, pro tip here, always go back to that document when you come to do an assignment, and before you hand it in, to double check to make sure you know what we're looking for. The next thing is that it's 2,000 words long, so it's only, when you think about it, 4 or 5 pages. So that means you're going to have to be careful about how you structure it and what you include. And there's really a balance between two things. On the one hand, you need to provide an overview of your process. And the other, you need to provide detail of what you're doing. Now, I guess the key to this is that you don't provide detail on everything. You provide an overview of your whole process, and then you pick a few specific things to look at in detail, with maybe, a page, half a page to a page on each of those things that you're focusing on. Now, with any academic assessment, it has to be referenced, and you have to show where you've got your ideas from and how you're using them. And when you think about it, referencing is really the same as showing you're working in a maths problem. Rather than just saying, this is the answer and I know it because I'm great, what you're saying is, look, I know the answer, but I've also gone and I've read all these things, I've understood them, I've shown initiative, I've sought out things on my own, I've found new things. So referencing is really about showing the work that you've done behind the scene. You have to do it in terms of being honest and showing as well, but fundamentally the self-interested part of referencing is you showing that work. And it becomes very clear the difference between someone who's just bluffing through this sort of assignment, who's just heard some things and they just stuck it down, and someone who's actually read and gone looking and actually thought about it. Okay, so I would put the areas I would put priority focus on are the things that you've done the most reading around, and the things that you're most interested in, and things that you think there's something to talk about. Something like using Ostly as a tool is something that's probably very, very useful to everyone, but it might not be the kind of thing that you could write 300 or 400 words about. However, some of the things around legal thought processing and thinking like a lawyer, some of those things might be, and you might be something you can do some research of your own and find out some more information on. So there you go. So the final process is broken into tools, strategies, and theories, and you can probably do realistically, it's kind of an overview and a page on each of those things. It doesn't have to be that way, but that's one way of thinking about breaking it down. Now, the materials on Moodle give you some more examples of what those things might be. So have a look there. And at the end, there's also a 200-word reflection, and that's not going to be counted, but it's just around half a page on your professional development needs. What this has told you about where you're going and what you're going to have to do to take it to the next level. And this has an extra benefit if you're actually telling us what your PD needs are. So rather than just saying, I'm going to go off and do this by myself, which you can do, and a very motivated person will be looking at skilling up on their own. But if I see a trend running through a lot of them where people are saying, what I would really, really like to know is more detail on how to use this particular thing or more about this, then that's something that we can take into account, and we can provide you with more resources for that. So in terms of the higher grades, in terms of if you're aiming, and hopefully you are aiming for the higher grades, what we're really looking for you, and this is in the rubric, is we're looking for that critical understanding, not just saying this is here and this is what the book says, but understanding what that means in the scheme of things, being able to evaluate those propositions, and being able to join things up and to connect things together and say, this tool and this theory both connect, and they're both part of a single approach, and this is what it means. So that's the sort of thing that the people who've thought a lot about it, the people who have spent time, who are not doing their assignment the night before it's due, tend to be the people who have got the reflective space to think about that stuff and to develop those ideas. So if you're thinking about it, you're talking about it, all that stuff, that's really good. But don't expect, if you're waiting to the last minute to do it, that this stuff's going to magically appear out of the air, because it just doesn't. This is the sort of thing that you need to think about. And I think possibly one of the most important things that come out of the criteria in the rubric in terms of the best papers is this something that you could use, that someone else could use, that you could give them in a mentoring process? Is this the sort of thing that you could say, hey, you're new to law, here's my handy guide to how you go about thinking around legal problems? And if that's the case, you're definitely on the right track.